Assalamualaikum, I'm Dain Rahim binti Syam and I would like to present about the digital archival preservation. Digital archival preservation is quite similar to the physical archival preservation, but all the document and the materials in archive been digitized by scanning or photograph to make the materials available online for its user. It is also made in order to secure and minimize the risk of the archival material from the deteriorations. A digital archive usually store a collection of information in digital format such as document, pictures, videos and other materials to providing a long-term access to its information. It is also committed to permanent preservation and availability of the research materials to ensure accessibility by converting and upgrading digital file format to comply with the new technology standards. The main objective for digital archival preservation is to provide a long-term access to the digital information or the digital archival materials to its user. But there are also few other objectives in implementing the digital archival preservation, which is the first one is to look for, enlarge and develop digital archival preservation procedure that's suitable for our organization and its material. Second is to identify the risk and possible loss of the material such as file formats, application and obsolescence. And third is to implement the standard and best practice that's suitable for both national and international standard for the digital archival preservation in the organization. And the last objective is to provide an easy and safe access to the material for its user. The reason why we need to implement the digital archival preservation is to overcome a few problems when it comes to preserve the original materials. Some of the problems are storage, which is the physical materials require more space to preserve. Second, skill staff. In order to preserve the physical materials or original materials, we need to have a skill staff to know the methods in handling the materials with care. Next is the material deterioration. We digitize the material in order to prevent or minimize the risk of material deteriorations. Next is to create awareness about the digital preservation, which is not much company or organization knows about the digital preservation and they prefer to handle the preservation in the all methods. And lastly, the relevancy towards the all methods. With the advancement technology nowadays, we need to use the benefits or the advancement of technology in preserving the archival material, which could benefits not only the organization itself but also its user, which is they can access the material digitally and online anytime they want and anywhere they want it to be. The main purpose of digital preservation is to secure the protection over the information materials in a long time for its current and future user. With the advancements of technologies nowadays, there are few important purposes that meet purpose of implementing the digital archival preservation towards the company. The first one is to promote and enhance the digital preservation capabilities in preserving the documents and to ensure the effective use of the information. Second, to minimize the space and time throughout all aspects in preservation processes. Third is to make the information survive in a long time. And next, to provide a global accessibility towards the archival materials. And lastly, for the purpose of backup of the archival materials and documents. In order to achieve the goals of the digital archival preservation, it is important for the organization to comply with the standard compliance and standard practice of the digital archival preservation industry. The organization needs to comply with the standard between the material and its system storage. For example, the company or the organization can use the open archival information system from the current sector of the business to avoid and minimize any problem that have possibility to violate any archival laws and standard. For our organization, we would like to propose to use an open DMS system called Bitfarm Archive, which is a free open source and free license course system that boot for document management in Microsoft Windows software. One of the reasons why this system is widely used in digital archival preservation is because it is updated with the current law in archival management, and it has wide range of function for its user. So as you can see, this is the user interface of the Bitfarm Archive, and the other interface, how it looks like in the system, as you can see in the slides. So I think it is the system is quite good for our organization to use in order to implement the digital archival preservation in our company. Next is roles and responsibility. There are few roles and responsibility that important in implementing the digital archival information in our organization. First is archivist or record manager, which is responsible to review the electronic record and digital archive materials management in the organization. Next, they also need to establish the plan and methods to assess the long-term period access to the digital materials. And next is content and archivist, content or archivist specialist, which is to evaluate, choose, obtain and handle the digital materials to establish the standard that define the scope of the archival activities and processes. Next is format specialist, which is responsible to digitize the content of the archival materials for preservation, retrieval and accessible processes. Next is metadata specialist, which is responsible to check and making sure the digital materials is reported according to its standards policy to have a long-term access to the archival materials. Next is preservation specialist, which is responsible to recommend the long-term period preservation and access to digital material by offer it advice and assistance towards the content and format specialist. Lastly is technology specialist, which is responsible to establish the software or application, buying the hardware, perform the backup and replication policies and procedure, and also to perform system audit and reporting for the digital archival preservation. All these roles and responsibility has its importance roles in the organization to making sure that the digital archival preservation processes can be done effectively without any with less risk of getting error or any problem in the future.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Michael bin Jamaluddin. Today, I'm going to continue with our presentation about organization variability. The first one is the scope. Digital preservation program is a responsibility of recognition, securing and providing the means necessary to preserve and ensure access to digital resources under management of the organization. Highlighting the fact that principle, not all digital resources that the organization obtain or produce can be protected. Collection policies can be benefit the organization in terms of acquisition of preservation resources. Next one is operating principle. Organization will use the following principle and step to guide the development, implementation and management of the organization's digital preservation program. such as long-term access to selected digital content, is the main priority in preservation process and activity. Next one, recognize that the planning and usage of digital preservation is a shared responsibility that draws upon the expertise of numerous partners throughout the organizations. Third, establish procedure for meeting and fulfill the archival requirements relating to the source, change or evidence, integrity and confidentiality of organizational document and assets. Fourth, partnership and collaborative agreement will be reviewed and constructed where all the appropriate use of the digital resources is taken into consideration. Fifth, organization will provide and encourage the training for staff that responsibility for digital preservation process to remain up to date with the current trends, standards, and the best practices in the preservation field. Lastly, highlighting the diverse nature of digital preservation involves having the organization to continuously evaluate technological growth to analyze and adapt its operational processes to ensure sustained preservation and access. The next subtopic is selection and acquisition. Archive will prioritize digital records for selection and acquisition based on the characteristic of record. They are authentic, static, authority, and unique. In order to have more security, top secret and confidential record will be placed at the most secure place to secure the privacy of the record. In selecting and acquiring documents, employees need to consult with IT expert. Next subtopic is access and use. In accessing and use process record, it will be important to have access to each record based on the most appropriate technology available on the current market. This is due to the records are preserved for use and access purposes. So, for future access, usage and analysis record archive, organization had to have active digital preservation management for a better performance in the field programs. And the last one is challenges. The implementation for a functional and sustainable digital preservation program will come along with a few types of challenges, such as the first one is cost. There is now a growing realization for the needs of operating expense for models and an affordable price project. The scale must be therefore be affected by the level of willingness and dedication. The program should reflect clear expectations for a necessary material. The labor cost needed for digital preservation would be most important in implementing digital preservation, not only focusing on experts, but also have a different proportions of personnel such as accounting, administration, IT support, and more. The second one is expertise. In this era, we know that the rapid and shocking pace of technological paces changes means the organization needs to know all latest technologies that relating with the digital preservation, or else it will bring a big problem in the future. Other than that, expertise staff also need to be hired by the organization for handling this field. They also need to keep updating the current technology and system follow with the technology changes. The third one is digital and skill. Organization need to provide training or some sort of seminar for their staff, since some of them are contribute internally and externally to the digital preservation process, even though majority of the organization employees do not have digital preservation experience and knowledge as their substantial part in their duties. The fourth is rapid growth and evolutions. In comparing to the situation that apply to the book, digital archiving requires relatively regular investment to overcome rapid inefficiencies and challenges created by the technology changes. Since digital material is one of the machine dependent for accessing information is not something that easy and possible unless someone gain the access. And the last one is privacy and confidentiality. Data held inside the repository or archive could also be subject to Information Protection Act or other privacy legislation to confirm data held by the people. Data can also be the subject for privacy agreement. Protection and privacy concern may have an effect on digital material will be overseen inside the repository or by third parties and should be made it accessible to be used. Moving on to the next one is financial. Archive organization is established unique tool to help and improve the income. Okay, the next one is facility and equipment. Every organization archive that wanted to implement digital preservation program need to provide a few room facility to have a good preservation process. There are a few considerations that need to take note in facility part, such as fire resistant and fireproof building that equipped with appropriate fire detection. The building also need to include smoke and heat detectors and fire extinguisher ready for any emergency event. The next one is temperature for a server room that usually have been suggested for any organization between 10 to 28 Celsius. The room need to be cold to ensure that the heat from the equipment can be reduced to avoid any damaged components. Not only facility, equipment also can be one of the most important thing to taking into consideration in financial budget. The next one is security management. From accession process to processing for a long-term management, the archive organization will have operation control to guarantee the quality and credibility for the digital resources. Specified examination and review on the digital resources will be carried out on a regular basis to preserve against any data loss. As far as security is concerned, whenever security threatening digital archiving, security methodology measure will become more complex as staff do not deal with the physical appearance for the material, but handle material using technological devices such as servers, maintain information or data in the mainframe computers, and use database to store information. First one is computer security software installation. In a modern time, group of people have intellectual capability to break into mainframe system. These people are known as cyber criminal and data thieves. All valuable data will be exposed and may be controlled, such as applying false information to digital document or altering the course of history. The organization should prepare high-tech appliance security system inside computer system. These are the following example can be used. The first one is firewall, is to prevent any hacker accessing the digital archive. The second one is security software. Install it for every computer terminal that able to gain access through digital archive. And the last one is alarm system software, is to notify if there are any threats or any intruder trying to sneak inside the digital archive. Okay, the second method is protection against unauthorized access. All materials stored in the digital archive are protected against unauthorized or suspicious individual while the digital archiving process is ongoing. However, staff also cannot identify any individual who visit the archive from time to time. Frightened the times unwanted individual may be out of sight or from the hook. Employees are therefore advised to undergo through the authorization process first before they are allowed to use digital archive, as for example commanding visitor to obtain and gain permission to access content from the digital archive, such as completing digital registration form. Moving on to the next point is security measurement. The most common causes of damage to material within an unsuitable digital archive environment are known. Archive management need to observe certain aspects to ensure that the digital archive environment is secure and appropriate for any individual visit. Example of security measure are the mechanical control environment methods, the improvement of the archive environment, and lastly, the adjustment of the digital archive material. According to British Council, all material must be placed in the safe area, so every archive in organization should determine optimum condition and decision to improve the archive environment for safety of the material and people. There are a few types of security measurement that every organization can be followed, such as install surveillance camera CCTV around the digital archive. This method requires high-tech security mechanisms to be equipped for archive management to ensure that the digital archive environment is secured and protected. The advantageous factor that can be achieved is the security officer are able to monitor every activity, individual who go in and out and any preservation operation from the surveillance rooms. CCTV will assist in detecting any suspicious scenario that may be happen inside that areas, and staff can react to event as fast as they could. Okay, the next step is inventory control. Inventory control and cautious are essential part of security measure. If an archive organization is unclear about the type of digital material in its possessions, it becomes almost difficult to determine whether a thief has been committed and when. If digital archive material is not properly identified and described, it will be difficult to determine evidence of ownership even when the stolen material are recovered in the possessions of someone. The last step is controlling entrance and exit of digital archive. Optimally, all entrance should always be protected and require staff to undertake inspection of every individual who enter the area. Besides that, in order to prevent any unauthorized withdrawal of digital material, they need to mark all the records and material with magnetized strips. Archive management should also build and place an electronic detection system at their exit. For every piece of information, thieves cannot simply sneak out of digital archive area. It is possible digital archive should have a system for investigation status material being removed. Okay. Moving forward to our Gantt chart for digital preservation program. Our Gantt chart is for month of October. As you can see on the slide, on the first week we have client request catalog, and also on the first week we have sent requested catalog to them. On the first week and second week, we have client making decision, and for the third week, we receive order and prepared for their digital preservation program. And for the third and fourth week, we have start implementing program.
With the advancements of technology nowadays, it is important to every organization to implement or develop the digital archival preservation. Even though there are few challenges in implementing the digital archival preservation, but it could be a good development or a good things to develop by the organization to protect and give along long-term access to its materials for its user. User nowadays prefer to access the materials digitally or online because it is much easier for them without need to go to the organization to access the materials. And it could be a troublesome for some of them when they want to access the materials at the organization but the material is not available. Digital preservation is also can act as the backup for the original materials when the original material cannot be saved from deterioration. The digital form of the material can be accessed even though the original material is not available anymore for its user to access. So it is quite important for every organization that provide the archival or records materials or information materials for implement the digital archival preservation for a long-term access to its materials in the future.